Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome to this video, guys. Okay, let me know in the comments if you guys can hear. If the sound's working properly. Okay, so it should be. Yeah, it's working. Okay, let's start then. So, A'udhu Billahi Minash Shaitanir Rajeem. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Okay, just to recap on what we were talking about last time. So, we mentioned about Surah Yaseen. So, we mentioned about Surah Yaseen, and we said Surah Yaseen is a chapter which was revealed in Makkah, and the themes are going to be a very Meccan based themes. And I gave you an overview of what this chapter is about. So I said to you in the beginning, Allah talks about the message of the Prophet ﷺ. He talks about the challenges the Prophet ﷺ is going to face from those who are going to reject the message, about the idea of there being in the past groups who also went through this as well, and the examples, and then the Day of Judgment, and then 3 sets of signs of Allah, and then after that the Day of Judgment again, Jannah, Jahannam, and then a bit about the message of the Prophet ﷺ, and at the end finishing off with a response to some of the arguments that the disbelievers presented. So this was basically what the surah was talking about. So last week we started off and we said that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala here mentions to the Prophet ﷺ his message, and this is an important thing that we have to understand, like we said, because the Prophet ﷺ at the end of the day, had feelings as well, and felt let down by his community when they didn't accept the message, and he couldn't understand. Actually, you guys can't see the Quran, can you? So let me just bring up the Quran here so that you guys can see it. Okay, so okay, there it is. Excellent. Alright, so you guys can see now. Right, so let's bring that one up. So, like we said, that the Prophet ﷺ was being consoled here, and the consoling the Prophet ﷺ is considered to be a very important theme throughout the Quran, right? And this may be indication towards how we require consoling as well. Yeah, so we require emotional support at times of when we're going through difficulties. Okay, so he says, أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم لقد حق القول على أكثرهم لقد حق القول على أكثرهم. So لقد حق القول على أكثرهم means that indeed, I'm just going to literally translate it, okay? So indeed, حق القول, the statement has become necessary upon most of them, and so therefore hum la yu'minun, they are not believing. So I've translated therefore, fa, this is one of the tafsirs. Now, like I said to you before, I don't want to go into a very, very detailed tafsir of Surah Yaseen, because that would, require me to kind of explain concepts which are very deep level, and then a lot of students are going to find it difficult to be able to keep up with it as well. So the idea of the tafsir lesson here, or the explanation of the Quran, is not to go too deep into it. It's rather just to give you guys an understanding of what the surah is referring to. Okay, so but if you guys do want to go into certain things, I'll give you little pointers or little clues and say, if you want to go and read more about this, you can go and check these tafsirs over there if you're interested in looking more detail at this. So he says لَقَدْ حَقَّ الْقَوْلُ عَلَى أَكْثَرِهِمْ. So that's why I translate it as and therefore فَهُمْ. Whereas some of them don't do that. Some of them will translate this as a result. Yeah. And I'll explain this in a little bit of detail so you can get an understanding of how Muslim Mufassirin had a challenge of trying to understand the Quran and trying to have the understanding of that in the light of the explanations that were passed down from the early generations, and Arabic grammar and balagha and all these sciences, mixed together. So here, لَقَدْ حَقَّ الْقَوْلُ عَلَى أَكْثَرِهِمْ. So here, when the word laqad is used in Arabic language, this word is generally used for like a high level of emphasis. If you want to emphasize something at a very, very high level, then you use this kind of a statement. لَقَدْ حَقَّ الْقَوْلُ عَلَى أَكْثَرِهِمْ. Right? So it's used for, like, if you remember last time we said, when you're trying to convince someone in Arabic, you use what they call devices of emphasis. Right? So in English, we say things like, it's snowing outside, and someone says, I don't believe you. You go, no, really, it's snowing outside. So you added the word really, or you say something like, I swear it's snowing outside. By Allah, it's snowing outside. So these are all words used for emphasis now. So when we're using words for emphasis in these kind of sentences, the thing that we have to remember is that there's certain times you use emphasis and certain times you don't use emphasis. Like, for example, let's say you're speaking to your kids and your kids are little children. You hardly will ever use emphasis, because the statement, like you speaking, is speaking from the level of an authority, and authority speaking automatically qualifies it to be emphasized. Right? So if the government tells us something, the government doesn't have to say, indeed you have to pay your taxes, or indeed you must drive on the left hand side of the road. They don't have to say that. They'll just say, drive on the left hand side of the road, or pay your taxes. Right? Because the authority doesn't have to speak like that. But so the question now comes in balagha, is that how is the Prophet ﷺ here? The Prophet ﷺ is being told this, as in لَقَدْ حَقَّ الْقَوْلُ. So he's being addressed, and so the emphasis is being used here. So what they say is that this is where you make someone who is convinced of your argument, but you use words as though you're trying to tell everyone else that this is your problem. So let me give you an example. So sometimes, for example, let's say your child is messing around, and the next door neighbor's child has also come to your house and they're messing around as well. And you can't really tell the next door neighbor child off. So what do? You tell off your child, but by you telling off your child, you're implicitly, speaking to the next door neighbor's child. So the next door neighbor's child is not directly being told off, but he's kind of getting the hint, right? Not to mess around. So the same thing happens over here as well. So لَقَدْ حَقَّ الْقَوْلِ. So here, this laqad, it comes for emphasis, but this type of emphasis is not really for the Prophet ﷺ, because he's convinced anyway. Whatever Allah says, he accepts it. This is more for others, that others are questioning, thinking that, wait a minute, the Prophet ﷺ is conveying the message. There's so many people out there that are not believing in the message. Does that mean that the message is not true? Does that mean that the message is somehow flawed? As in, these people are getting away with it. Like, they're being told about Islam, and in the Prophet ﷺ's face, they're rejecting it. Abu Lahab and Abu Jahl and all these guys. And they're like going to their families, having a meal, going for work, going here, going there, going on holiday. So how is it that these people are getting away with all of this? So here is where لَقَدْ حَقَّ الْقَوْلُ عَلَى أَكْثَرِهِمْ. Right, so لَقَدْ حَقَّ الْقَوْلُ. This is like saying, don't you think that these people are getting away with it? لَقَدْ حَقَّ الْقَوْلُ عَلَى أَكْثَرِهِمْ. Yeah, by Allah. So لَقَدْ can be translated as by Allah, I swear that the statement has become compulsory upon them, has become mandatory upon them, right? Has become compelling upon them. So that's just a little understanding of how when we read the Quran and you read the translation, you don't realize why in the translation certain things are translated as they are, right? So sometimes the translator will be a very good translator and he'll keep all of this in mind. He'll have a good understanding of Arabic grammar and balagha, and he'll be able to capture all of these little details as much as possible. And sometimes the translator will be a very superficial translator, and he'll just translate based upon meanings of words. That's it, and it's not really a good job. So لَقَدْ حَقَّ الْقَوْلُ عَلَى. Now what is this qawl? Like the qawl has become haqq. We know this word haqq, it has the meaning of truth. In Arabic, haqq means something which is firm and permanent, right? That's what it literally means. The haqq is something that's firm, and it's something that is considered to be permanent. So you got a level of permanency there. Haqq al-qawlu. So when we use this word haqqa, right, the tafsirs usually say something like wajaba al-qawlu, laqad wajaba al-qawl. The qawl has become established. Why? Because something that's a wajib, necessary in our faith, is something that's permanent, it's fixed, there's no changing of this. But then the question comes, what is the qawl? So some of them say that this is in reference to the statement, like the statement has become necessary upon them. That is the statement, the ultimate statement that Allah made to Iblis when he banished him from Jannah. And what was that statement? لَأَمْلَأَنَّ جَهَنَّمَ مِنْكُمْ مِنْهُمْ أَجْمَعِينَ مِنْكَ وَمِنْهُمْ أَجْمَعِينَ. That I'm going to fill Jahannam with all of the people who follow you. So whoever follows you, that was the statement. So this statement has become incumbent upon them, has become binding upon them, you can say. Right, so this has become necessary upon them. لَقَدْ حَقَّ الْقَوْلُ. Now others say no. لَقَدْ حَقَّ الْقَوْلُ. This is referring to Allah's decision. Allah's decision, like a judge. Imagine a judge. When a criminal has to stand in front of the judge, and the judge, says you are sentenced to this many years in prison or whatever. That statement of the judge, this is something which is necessary upon him. Yeah, that statement of the judge. لَقَدْ حَقَّ الْقَوْلُ. So it's like Allah's, ultimate, infinite sort of decision that was given regarding such people. This has become necessary upon them. Like Allah has spoken the truth, and this statement applies to Abu Lahab, Abu Jahl, Fir'aun, etc. لَقَدْ حَقَّ الْقَوْلُ عَلَى أَكْثَرِهِمْ. Upon most of them. فَهُمْ لَا يُؤْمِنُونَ. So فَهُمْ لَا يُؤْمِنُونَ. Now does this mean that because Allah had ordained for these people to not accept Islam, to go astray, to go Jahannam, that's why they're not accepting Islam? So then the question would come, isn't that something out of their control? So the Mufassirin say no. What the ayah is actually saying is that in Allah's infinite knowledge, Allah knew that these people are not going to accept Islam. And so in His infinite knowledge, He had already pointed out who is going to go Jahannam. Right? So for us, it's difficult to understand this because we see things very linear. Like, for example, we only see things in one way, right? The way we perceive the world, and how days go by, the minutes go by, and the years go by. So we only see things in one time, right? So imagine you were to split our entire life. Imagine, we've been living for, let's say, 30 years or 40 years, and we split the entire time into little seconds. How many seconds are there going to be? And so every time you think of something, or you contemplate something, or you read something, or you eat something, or you're doing it in a certain one of those portions of time. But you're not doing it before that, you're not doing it after that. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is free of all time. So when Allah talks in the Quran, what we have to understand is sometimes Allah is talking from a reference point outside of the whole concept of time, which is very difficult for us to understand. Like, how can someone think without outside of time? How can someone be outside of time? Yeah, so this is a very sort of deep sort of concept that we have. So لَقَدْ حَقَّ الْقَوْلُ عَلَى أَكْثَرٍ فَهُمْ لَا يُؤْمِنُونَ. The other meaning of this is فَهُمْ لَا يُؤْمِنُونَ would mean that حق القول على أكثرهم. And as a result of this, these people are not going to believe. Right? So this would be translated as a result, فهم لا يؤمنون. And the other one was that فهم لا يؤمنون, meaning that because they are not going to believe, right? This is called ta'liliya. Because they are not going to believe, ta'liliya. Right? حق القول على أكثرهم. So it's like the qawl being necessary upon them is contingent to them not accepting Islam. So them not accepting Islam has like sealed their fate now. Yeah, so their fate has been sealed with not accepting Islam. Anyway, so this is what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is mentioning about. Yeah, so in other words, you warn the people, right? And if they don't accept Islam, that's fine. That's up to them. And then the outcome, the result is going to be upon them. إِنَّا جَعَلْنَا فِي أَعْنَاقِهِمْ أَغْلَالًا فَهِيَ إِلَى الْأَذْقَانِ فَهُمْ مُقْمَحُونَ. Indeed, we have made فِي أَعْنَاقِهِمْ, in their necks, أَغْلَالًا. أغلال is the plural of غُل, right? And a غُل is a shackle. So a shackle basically is like a collar, a big collar they have, and the hands are tied to it. So it's like your hands and your neck are tied together. Yeah, it's a type of shackles that they used to have in the past. So this is known as a ghul, and the plural is aghlal. So inna ja'alna, we have made in their necks shackles, fahiya ila al-adhqan, and so they are up to the necks. So the shackles are so large, they go all the way from the chest up to the neck. And if you've ever seen, if you ever Google it, you can actually Google it and look at medieval sort of shackles and these kind of like different sort of tools or weapons that they used to have to punish people. You can see some of these there. The gallows and all these other things that they had. Okay, so فَهُمْ مُقْمَحُونَ, and so therefore they are muqmah. The word muqmah comes from the word qamh. Qamh is like wheat or barley. So if you have like a stalk or a spike and it has the wheat, so like grains in there, they're all pointing upwards. So the muqmah is someone who is like this, who is like facing upwards, looking upwards. So in other words, what this ayah is indicating towards is that these people are in shackles, and the shackles are all the way up to their necks, and because it's up to their necks, they're looking upwards. This is one interpretation of it, and the other interpretation of it is that the shackles are so wide, right? So they're in shackles. The shackles are so wide that they can't look down, right? So they're unable to like look below. They have to look up. Yeah, so one is they're looking up because it's tightly stuck against their body, and the other one is that it's wide, but because they're in shackles and the shackles are quite large, they can't see underneath. So here's two different interpretations of this. So and if you want to read more about this in Tahrir al-Tanwir and Tahrir al-Tanwir and Ruh al-Ma'ani, these are the two ones that really discuss this. Okay, so then he says, now what does this really mean? Disbelievers, when we look at disbelievers, Abu Jahl and Abu Lahab, there's no record of them ever having shackles in their necks. So what does it mean that they've got shackles? So it can't be a physical meaning of this. So some of them have said that this is referring to what we call isti'ara. Yeah. So in the isti'ara is a type of figurative speech. Right, so it's like a figurative type of speech over here. In other words, them disbelieving has been described as being like someone who is shackled. Yeah, and them being unable to see their own faults is like a person who looks up and doesn't want to look down out of arrogance. So how does this work then? So the way we kind of possibly can understand it is that imagine if there is someone who is extremely arrogant, right? And arrogant people, they don't want to admit the truth. And to not admit the truth, they would do everything else besides, succumbing to the truth, submitting to it. So imagine, for example, the truth is all at the bottom, right, below them. So where are they going to look? They're going to look up, aren't they? So in other words, these people, there are many people in life who live their life in this fashion. As in, they don't want to admit the truth. They don't want to accept what another person is saying about them, the fault that another person is pointing out. They don't want to accept it. So what do? They raise their heads up as though they never heard it before, right? So they like turn away out of arrogance. This is one meaning of this. So you have groups of people in the world, like sometimes you come to maybe someone and you explain Islam to them and they know Islam makes all sense, but they just don't want to accept it. They don't want to accept the fact that, you know, we have to submit to the Prophet ﷺ, or that we have to, you know, give up on pork or give up on alcohol, or do all these kind of things. And so they reject. So the Prophet ﷺ is being told here that the rejectors in his time were not really rejecting because they had a genuine doubt about Islam. Like, they weren't rejecting it because they had a genuine doubt. And even though Islam was explained to them, like the oneness of Allah didn't make sense to them, it wasn't like that. Or that the Prophet also being a prophet, it wasn't like that. The issue was that they had something else inside of them. And this is like I told you before, this is like a person who eats something which has food poisoning. So it gives them food poisoning, and because of that food poisoning, everything else that they eat after that, it doesn't digest in their system. Like, it doesn't get into their system, right? So this is like, you can imagine what these people are experiencing. There's something inside of them that they don't want to rectify, right? There's an illness, like Allah says, there's an illness inside of them, in their hearts, they don't want to rectify. And so it doesn't matter how much Islam they hear or they listen to, they're just not going to accept it. The other way that we can look at this is that إِنَّا جَعَلْنَا فِي أَعْنَاقِهِمْ أَغْلَالًا فَهِيَ الْأَذْقَانِ فَهُمْ مُقْمَحُونَ. This is in reference to all of the shackles of kufr that they put onto themselves. The shackles that are contrary to Islam. Everything that's contrary to Islam will shackle you. Right? So they're thinking like this, that if I accept Islam, I'm going to be shackled to Allah. And I don't want to be shackled to Allah. I want to do everything I want to do. But in reality, they are shackling themselves with their own nafs. So with their own desires, with their own nafs, they're shackling themselves. And in reality, these people are living slave to themselves, slave to their own concepts. So if you look at anyone in the world, for example, anyone who believes in any sort of system besides Allah's system, they're all shackling themselves. So for example, if you look at mushrikeen religions, Hinduism, Buddhism, Christianity even, or anything which is, they all seem to be shackling themselves. They're all shackling themselves to a belief system that they've, even atheists, they have certain beliefs that they've developed themselves. They've shackled themselves to this, and because of this, they don't want to see, right, the truth. And this is where it's very important that when you're studying, when a student studies knowledge, they have to take out of their system everything that they thought that they knew from before. Sometimes I get people, who study with me, and sometimes they've studied in other places, bits and bobs here, and they're bringing all that stuff in. And then what I tend to find is that they find it very hard to be able to understand what I'm teaching them, because they're trying to, uneducate themselves. They're declogging everything that they've got. They're trying to fit it in with what I'm teaching them. And because many times it's not working together, because maybe what they've studied, what the context of it was different, and what I'm teaching, the context of it is different. So it clashes, and so they get confused. So this is a very important thing, that when a person is accepting Islam, they have to understand that everything that they understood about reality and has to be put to a side, and you have to listen to how Allah is explaining reality to us, the oneness of Allah. What does oneness mean? Not like the Christians say oneness. Or what does it mean to be the Prophet of Allah? Not like other faiths who have fake prophets. Or believing in the hereafter, not like some of the other faiths would believe about the hereafter. So this is a very important concept here. Now, some of the Mufassir, like Imam Razi in his tafsir Mafatihul al-ghayb, he actually mentions that this kind of aghlal that they have upon them, this is something which is can easily be broken. Yeah, it can be broken, and they can simply be broken by accepting Islam. So accepting Islam is the way to release yourself from these shackles. So anyway, then he says, وَجَعَلْنَا مِنْ بَيْنِ أَيْدِيهِمْ سَدًّا وَمِنْ خَلْفِهِمْ سَدًّا فَأَغْشَيْنَاهُمْ فَهُمْ لَا يُبْصِرُونَ. So he says, وَجَعَلْنَا مِنْ بَيْنِ أَيْدِيهِمْ سَدًّا. بَيْنِ أَيْدِي in Arabic means in front. So we have made in front of them a barrier. وَمِنْ خَلْفِهِمْ سَدًّا, and behind them a barrier. فَأَغْشَيْنَاهُمْ, and thus we have covered them. فَهُمْ لَا يُبْصِرُونَ, and so they can't see. So what does this mean then? So this is referring to, some say this is referring to a continuation of what was said before. In other words, because they are living a life of shackles, it's like they've created for themselves this wall in front and a wall behind. What does a wall in front and behind mean? So this could mean physically, as in the real world that they're living in real time. They've created for themselves a physical sort of like barrier. They, like a filtering out, not a physical one that's made from bricks, but as in everything, that all the information that reaches them from the front and all the information that comes to them from behind, right? All the information, they filter it out before they accept it. They filter it. They don't want to listen to raw information, and that's also another problem with people the likes of Abu Jahl, Abu Lahab. They want to listen to Islam, but they want to listen to it through their own interpretation of Islam. And this is also another, a problematic thing that we have. We want to understand. We don't want to listen to things as they are, right? As the verse is. We already have put these filters on, just like you have on social media filters for people's images. So you have this idea of people filtering out information that's being said to them. So the Quran would say something, but they're already putting all these filters on. And they're saying, oh, actually the Quran means this, or actually means this, actually means this. And this is where, it creates problems, because, for example, like if a Christian was to read the Quran, the Christian might say, oh, but when God talks about Allah, and sometimes he calls himself Ar-Rahman, and sometimes he calls himself Ar-Rahim, doesn't he have different entities? Isn't Allah more than one? Right? So they're trying to look at the Quran to justify their own standing. So if you read the Quran to justify your own position or your own like post or pre sort of like concepts that you've already conceived in your mind, you're not going to understand the Quran. It's never going to happen, right? Because one of the first and foremost important lessons for understanding the Quran is you have to believe in the ghayb. You have to believe in the unseen. Believing in the unseen is something which is key in order for a person to be able to declutter their mind. So this decluttering of the mind is extremely important, and this is what this surah is going to be mentioning, like the story that's going to come a bit later about the people who are arguing with the messengers. This is what can happen to us when we already have this mindset already set, and when we read the Quran or we listen to a sheikh or we listen to this, we already got our own mindset set, and then we interpret everything according to what we want to understand. So he's saying, وَجَعَلْنَا مِن بَيْنِ أَيْدِيهِمْ سَدًّا. So this could be a sort of like sad, as in a filter that these guys are putting up in front of themselves and behind themselves, so that any information, anything that they see, anything, all of this stuff is being filtered through their own understanding, right? That they've kind of like adjusted, and then they're not really listening to the truth. Yeah. And sometimes, like I give you an example, sometimes this happens in talks. Like you'll have someone who listen to a talk, and maybe sometimes even my talks, someone will listen, but they're not listening to learn something. They're listening to find faults. They'll be listening to say, oh, he said this, but this is wrong, and then make a note of it, and then they'll say this is wrong and this is wrong, this is wrong. So it's as though the person was not really, they'd already had in their mind what they were gonna listen to and what they were wanted at the end of it, right? They already had made that mind up, and when you have that mind made up, you're not really going to benefit. So that's the first meaning. Second meaning of this, saddan, this is referring to historic, as in future in front of you, past behind you. So in other words, they don't want to learn from the past and future sort of like events. So how do you learn from past events? So you look at, for example, what happened in the past. Look at what happened to those people who prophets came to and they rejected the prophets, right? They don't want to listen to that. And the same thing with many societies that we have today. They don't want to listen to the problems that the societies met, and therefore they're going in the same path. And future, meaning for the future, they're not really trying to improve their own future for the sake of improvement. All they want to do is they have their own goals and they set their future towards that, and they're working towards that. Again, this can become very problematic. So because if, for example, you're an atheist and your aim is that in the next 10 years of my life, I'm going to try to make as many people atheists as possible. It doesn't matter what they read, it doesn't matter what information they receive in the future, because they've already set their goals. That means that their goals are so concrete that it will override anything that comes to them. So جَعَلْنَا مِن بَيْنِ أَيْدِيهِمْ سَدًّا وَمِنْ خَلْفِهِمْ سَدًّا فَأَغْشَيْنَاهُمْ. Right, so this is what can happen to us as well. So we have to, when we are learning about the truth, when we are, accepting Islam, and when we are studying, these are two times where we have to be very open to accepting what's being told to us. We listen to it carefully, but the question obviously comes then, who do we study with? Right? Because sometimes people tell us, don't study with these guys. These guys are corrupt. Don't study with these guys. Their beliefs are wrong, or these group or this. So this is where it becomes problematic. So I would say you find a scholar that you are happy with, that you believe that their knowledge is of a good level, and that you haven't seen them do anything outwardly which is against the teachings of Islam. As long as you find these two things, I would say study with them, listen to everything they have to say, and then later on you can come to your conclusions, right? And then if you find that this teacher was teaching things that seem to be going against what the scholars are saying, then you can make up your mind about that. But this is how we have to approach things as well. So جعلنا من بين أيديهم سدا ومن خلفهم سدا فأغشيناهم, we covered them. So in other words, because this wall is so big, and because the wall behind is so big, it's as though it's covered them. Imagine you're standing between two walls, like you're sandwiched between two walls, and you can't see anything in front and you can't see anything behind. What do you say? You say you're covered, aren't you, from all sides? So it's as though Allah is saying that these people are covered from all sides from any beneficial information reaching them. فَهُمْ لَا يُبْصِرُونَ, and thus they can't see. What kind of sight? They can't see with the sight of truth. So like I said, if you filter out your sight, if you already have in your mind what you want to see, right, you'll see that. But if you are open to, sometimes, for example, like in this country as well, in the West, you see certain things. People talk about vaccines. Should we take vaccines or not? So you have these two camps: the vaccine, the anti-vaccines. Things about should we have capitalism or not? So you have the two camps: capitalism and anti-capitalism. Should we vote for this party or this party? So we always have these various camps. Now, if you want to kind of see who is on the truth, you obviously have to do a lot of research, and you have to be very unbiased. But if you already kind of programmed your mind into thinking a certain way, and you know that, look, I'm going to accept only this kind of approach or this kind of person who says this, then you've already kind of covered yourself up from being able to see anything else. So then he says, فَهُمْ لَا يُبْصِرُونَ, and thus they can't see, as in they can see the world, but they can't really see with perception. They fail to be able to use their inner perception to be able to guide themselves there. Okay, so then he says, وَسَوَاءٌ عَلَيْهِمْ أَأَنذَرْتَهُمْ أَمْ لَمْ تُنذِرْهُمْ لَا يُؤْمِنُونَ, and it's equal, سَوَاءٌ عَلَيْهِمْ, upon them, upon those people, the people of Mecca, it's equal. أَأَنذَرْتَهُمْ, whether you warn them, أَمْ لَمْ تُنذِرْهُمْ, or you don't warn them, لَا يُؤْمِنُونَ, these people are not going to believe. In other words, if you have an audience of 100 people, and let's say there's 20 of them, and these 20 have already made up their mind about you, right? They already know what the answer is going to be to you, right? Before even listening to a word you're going to say, Allah is saying about them, it's the same whether you warn them or whether you don't warn them, they are not going to believe, right? Whether you warn them or whether you don't warn them, they're not going to believe. Now the question obviously comes is that if these people are already, like we said, that حَقَّ الْقَوْلُ عَلَى أَكْثَرِهِمْ, that most of these people, they just the stamp has been put on them, they're not really going to become Muslim, they're not going to accept Islam, then what's the point of giving them the message of Islam? So the answer to this is, and maybe some of you guys can put the answer in the comments as well, the answer to this, or one of the answers to this, would be is that the Prophet ﷺ does not know who will accept Islam. So what he has to do is simply convey the message to everyone. Why? Because the idea is that on the Day of Judgment, if someone comes in front of Allah, like Allah says, and they say to Allah, oh Allah, no messenger came to me, right? Then that person will be absolved of the punishment. Because Allah says in the Quran, ما كنا معذبين حتى نبعث فيهم رسولا, وما كنا مهلك القرى حتى نبعث في أمها رسولا. We don't punish a person, a group, or a city until we send amongst them a messenger. So many verses like this in the Quran, that Allah does not destroy a nation before He sends a messenger to them. And these people will have a valid excuse to say, oh Allah, look, we didn't have any messenger come to us. And the messenger that did come in the past, his message was distorted, so we didn't really have anything else to follow. These are known as the people of the fatra, the people that come between the time of two messengers or two prophets. The message doesn't reach them in the proper way, so these people are exempted from many of the teachings. So the Prophet ﷺ is told to innama alayk al-balagh. All you have to do is convey the message. You don't have to convince anyone of Islam. In other words, you don't have to force them that Islam is true. You just have to explain Islam to them and leave it to them. If they want to accept, they accept. If they don't want to accept, they don't accept. That's it. Just leave it. So it's like Allah is consoling the Prophet ﷺ that don't get upset if they're not going to accept your message. And this is also a lesson for us as well in life, that sometimes we try to tell people about something that they're doing that's wrong, and we've told them and they're not listening to us, then our job's done. We shouldn't kind of become depressed on that. We shouldn't think to ourselves, look, they're not listening to me, I've tried my best. And this is what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is consoling the Prophet ﷺ for. That innaka laminal mursalin, you are definitely a messenger. That there's no doubt about you being a messenger. The doubt is, there's no doubt in you not being a messenger. The doubt is in them. It's inside of them, and they are the problem. That's why they're not accepting Islam. Okay, so then he says, إِنَّمَا تُنذِرُ مَنِ اتَّبَعَ الذِّكْرَ. Now, who does the message of the Prophet ﷺ benefit? Who are the recipients who are going to be what we call the ummatul mustajaba, the one that are going to accept the message? So now we know the entire earth will not accept Islam, right? This is like a sort of like a guarantee from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the Quran. The 7 billion people on earth will not accept Islam. Even if you went and you conveyed the message to all of them, if in the time of the Prophet ﷺ there was a group of people who would not accept his direct message, because the Prophet ﷺ was the best speaker of Islam. He understood Islam the best. He was the direct recipient of revelation. So if him giving the message to someone is not going to make them accept Islam, then we know that us giving the message to people is not really going to make them accept Islam as well. So this is why the 7 billion people around the world will not all accept Islam. A lot of them will, a lot of them won't. So over here, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions about those people who are going to accept. In other words, what we call the ummatun mustajaba. The ummatun mustajaba. The ummah, they say, is divided into two categories. One ummah who are like fertile ground for accepting Islam. As in, these people are people who have the qualities inside of them to accept Islam. And you have one group who are not going to accept Islam. They don't have the qualities. They haven't inculcated themselves, or they've suppressed those qualities. And as a result, these people are not going to accept Islam. Okay, so what are the qualities? Allah says, إِنَّمَا تُنذِرُ مَنِ اتَّبَعَ الذِّكْرَ. You only warn, إِنَّمَا تُنذِرُ, you only warn مَنِ اتَّبَعَ الذِّكْرَ, the one who will carefully follow the reminder. وَخَشِيَ الرَّحْمَنِ بِالْغَيْبِ, and they have awe of Rahman, the most merciful, bil-ghayb. Now, this bil-ghayb, I'm going to translate it in several ways, right? But bil-ghayb literally means unseen. فَبَشِّرْهُ بِمَغْفِرَةٍ وَأَجْرٍ كَرِيمٍ. So give this person, whoever accepts Islam in this way and has these two qualities, اتَّبَعَ الذِّكْر, who carefully follows the reminder. And number 2, خَشِيَ الرَّحْمَنِ, and has this awe of the most merciful of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Their heart is filled with awe of Allah. Then give these people glad tidings, بِمَغْفِرَةٍ وَأَجْرٍ كَرِيمٍ, with forgiveness and with beautiful reward that befits Allah. Like what a reward would be from Allah, the most generous. So here, why are these two attributes mentioned for? Why is Allah saying to the Prophet ﷺ, your warning is only going to impact those percentage of people who are going to have these two things? So you can imagine like the conversation here, it's like a conversation between someone who is like a company who sends out a salesman, right? And the salesman goes to sell an item, right? So then the salesman go to each house and knocks on their door and then says, look, I'm selling this item, this is what the item can do, would you be interested? Like that. So it's like saying, look, right guys, I'm going to send you guys out, right, to go and sell this item, this product. Let's say it's a mobile phone, and let's say it's something like a laptop. And you have to remember there is going to be a small percentage who are not going to accept, not open the door to you, who are going to close the door in your face, right? You're going to have to get that, understood from day one. And number two is that you're going to have a good percentage of people, however, who are going to listen. They're going to listen at different levels. Some will open the door to you and listen. Some will listen to your whole conversation. Some will say to you that they're interested. Some will actually buy it off you straight away. So you're going to get this whole plethora of people out there who are going to accept. But those are the ones they've got two qualities inside of them, right? And the first quality is like this and that. So it's a very similar way that when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala speaks to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, Allah is giving advice to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam of how da'wah is supposed to be done, or how this sort of like the mindset of the da'i is supposed to be created. And unfortunately, what tends to happen to many of us is when we give da'wah, we don't realize, we think, we become really sort of like enthusiastic about giving da'wah, right? We watch some videos about some people giving da'wah here and there, and we think to ourselves, you know what, I'm going to explain Islam to everyone. And we fail to understand that giving da'wah is a skill, and every skill requires training. So us not having the training, we being deprived of the training, is something which is wrong, right? Because we could be harming other people by giving them the wrong interpretation of Islam, by explaining Islam in the wrong. Because just because we heard it from a scholar on YouTube, or we heard it, we attended a few lectures here and there, we think we understand how we can explain Islam to people. And I would say be very careful of this, because this could be a way of you deterring them from Islam, the way you explain it, the way you answer their questions. Yeah, unless you're very trained and you know what you're talking about, then I'd be very careful, because sometimes they can even it can backfire on you as well, because they can even ask you a question which you never thought about and puts your faith in doubt. Right? Sometimes it happens with people. So we've got to be very careful about when we're trying to, explain Islam to other people. Explaining Islam is fine, but trying to convince them to accept Islam is different. All right. So he says, what are the two? So the two are this. Look, ittaba' al-dhikr. A person has to inside be willing, right, from day one, that if they are going to accept this, that they're going to follow this. Imagine someone, you're a business and you're hiring people, and let's say a person comes to you for an interview, and in the interview they say, look, I want to accept this job, but I don't want to do anything you guys tell me. I don't want to come to work at 9 a.m. I don't want to leave at 5. I don't want to sit at a desk. I want to do things my own way. I want to talk to whoever I want to talk to. So this person is not willing to follow the policy of the organization. This person is not really gonna be an asset. It's not going to be beneficial. This isn't going to be a true employee representative of the organization. So ittaba' al-dhikr is very important. We have to have inside of us this ability, or this sort of like characteristic, that we are going to follow whatever Allah tells us, right? Even though we might not get up for Fajr on time, even though we might miss a few fasts, and even though we might backbite now and again, even though we might do things that are against Islam's teachings, but we have to have it inside of us that, look, I am willing, inside, deep down, I am willing, Ya Allah, I am willing to accept and follow what you tell me, right? This is my promise to you. So this is the ittaba' al-dhikr. They have to be willing to follow the dhikr. And Islam, the Quran is called a dhikr. Dhikr means remembrance. It's as though this Islam is like an innate, right? It's like an internal sort of programming that we've got inside of us. Islam is like inside of our biology. It's inside of our minds. We're born with it, you can say. It's our fitrah. And the Quran is simply just reminding us of who Allah is. It's reminding us of where we came from, reminding us. So the details of it we don't have inside of us, but it's as though we've got this built-in system inside of our programming that we know there's an existence of God. And the Quran simply just revives that, dusts off the fitrah and revives the fitrah and reminds us. Ittaba' al-dhikr. Number 2 is khashiyya ar-Rahman. So the khashiyya ar-Rahman, this is to do with the idea that when you're, for example, when you're going to work for an employee, you have to remember you have to have some sort of level of respect for them, like the boss, the CEO. You have to have a level of respect, and you have to have inside your heart what you call khashiyya. All right, so khashiyya would be something like you feel like, sometimes people go out and they have to wear certain clothing, or they have to put certain makeup on, or they have to, walk in a certain, behave in a certain way, because they feel community pressure, peer pressure or whatever. So they feel this pressure, feeling this pressure inside of you, this awe inside of you. In Arabic, it's called khashya. So in Arabic, you have a word called khawf, which means fear. And that's when you're scared of something bad happening. So if you're scared of something bad happening, you call it khawf. Like, for example, if you're driving at night on the motorway and lights are not working, that's called khawf, that's not khashya. Right? But if you're walking on the street and you're very kind of particular about what you're wearing, your clothing and everything, and you're scared of what other people are going to say, that's not khawf. Arabics call that khashya. So the khashya is to do more with being overawed by someone. That's one way of looking at khashya. You're overawed, right? Sometimes you might be overawed by looking at someone, like someone who's very, very respectable, someone who's very high status. Like Sahaba will, in many occasions, they'd be overawed by being in the presence of the Prophet ﷺ. Some of them couldn't even look at the Prophet ﷺ's face out of the awe that the Prophet ﷺ had, natural awe he had inside of him. So this is known as the khashya. And khashya is something that is good that we have inside of our lives. Inside of our lives, having khashya is a very important thing, right? Because knowing that Allah is the Almighty, khashya, it prevents us from doing lots of things that we're not supposed to do. It's like it prevents us from revealing our bodies in a way that we wouldn't when we think about Allah. Or for example, like saying things that we're not supposed to say because we have that khashya of Allah in our hearts. Or standing in salat and not doing things that we're not supposed to do. You create that khashya. So khashya ar-Rahman is mentioned over here. So the khashya ar-Rahman, right, has this meaning of this awe that Allah is telling the Prophet ﷺ, who's going to listen to your warnings? Let me tell you. Person who is already inside of them are willing to follow the message. They already have it inside of them. It's just they just need to be convinced. And number two is the ones that have the khashya, the awe of the Rahman, the most merciful. Now, these two qualities, we can speak more about these qualities and look in the Quran how these have been mentioned and see the application of these throughout the Quran. But we don't want to do that because it's going to take too much time. But we can look in Surah Yaseen, for example. In Surah Yaseen, you have this, like the story that's going to come next, which we're going to cover next week, inshallah. It's where these messengers come to the people and these people reject them. So they clearly don't have ittaba al-dhikr and they clearly don't have khashya ar-Rahman inside of them. But the guy that comes from far away to remind the people, right, to tell the people that these messengers are true, this person clearly has ittaba al-dhikr inside of him and he has the khashya of Rahman, right, inside of him. So this is something which we have to try and understand it from in light of the Quran itself, in light of other stories in the Quran where we can see examples of khashya existing inside the people mentioned and where we can find khashya non-existent inside them. Okay, so khashya ar-Rahman. Now the question comes, why has ar-Rahman been mentioned in a way where the instead of Allah being mentioned, Rahman is most merciful? Like normally you only have awe of someone who you don't see their merciful side. Like let's say, for example, this happens a lot with for example, like big celebrities or big politicians, right? People talk about them so much that one day, let's say that politician turns up at your house, you just feel awed, shaking, and you don't know how to behave in front of him. This is because you don't see the soft side. Once you see the soft side, right, then what happens is that awe starts to decrease and decrease and decrease. So Muslims naturally have this awe for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But at the same time, Allah shows His merciful side so that there can be a balance between having awe of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and being able to relate to the commands of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, being able to communicate with Allah. Otherwise people will be too scared to raise their hands. Sometimes you see this, sometimes there'll be like a big sheikh or something that will come and someone will be there trying to ask the sheikh a question, but he'll be trembling and won't know how to say his words properly, and it happens. So this used to happen with the Prophet ﷺ, like I said. And so sometimes the Prophet ﷺ would make a joke or something, or he would say something that was funny, or he would say anything that sounded a bit out of the blue, just to kind of make them feel a bit comfortable, break the ice, like you say. So the icebreakers, these are things. So the question is, why does Allah say khashya Rahman? Shouldn't Allah say khashya Allah? Because khashya Allah The word name Allah is when Allah's jalal is there, when Allah's like might and power. That's when you sense the awe of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But when Rahman, the most merciful, you feel comfortable, right? You feel as though you can communicate with Him, you can talk to Him. So the khashiyah doesn't seem to. So they're indicating that the believers, their khashiyah is of such a unique nature that this khashiyah for Allah exists even when they remember Allah as being the Rahman. Like even when they remember Allah as being the Rahman, they still have this element of khashiyah inside of them, right? It's like a special type. It's not like a fake one. It's not like something which is only at certain times, and then once the person puts their guards down, everyone loses fear of that person and start abusing them. No, Muslims are not like that. Muslims do not abuse Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's rights, and they don't become deceived or they don't become misled by Allah's mercy. So sometimes this can happen. There might be someone who is a very, very, honorable person, a rich person, high status in society. And let's say, he comes to you and he gives you a handout, or he helps you out, supports you financially. So you're very in awe with him. And then he starts to come to your house and he sits with you and he has tea with you and eats food with you. And then you lose all that kind of fear. And then you start abusing him, and then you start saying things to him that hurt him, right? Because you lost that sort of like barrier between you two. With Allah, a believer doesn't do that. A believer always has this awe of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala everywhere they are. In fact, even once a man said to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, "O Messenger of Allah, am I allowed to walk around naked in my house?" And the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, no. He said, you should have that shyness, that bashfulness, that at least Allah is watching you. Like having that inside of you, look, at least Allah is watching me. That creates that kind of sense that every time you're alone, or every time you're in a place where you can commit a sin, because you feel, Allah hasn't done anything to me so far. Allah hasn't made me blind so far. Allah hasn't made me paralyzed so far. Allah hasn't sent down bolts from the sky. I've done so many sins in my life. So you fall into this deception of Allah's mercy. This is what is known as, like in the Quran, Allah says, "Ma gharraka bi rabbik al-karim." Ya ayyuhal insan, O mankind, what has deceived you in your Lord, the most generous. So we've got to be very careful of this. So he's saying khashiyar rahman bil ghayb. Now bil ghayb, there's actually three different translations for bil ghayb over here, and I'm not going to do all of them. I'm just going to tell you the way you can find these. So Ruh al-Ma'ani has in detail mentioned the different possibilities of where the ba here, or for those who have done Arabic grammar, where the ba is muta'alliq to, where it goes back to, right? So Khashiyar Rahman, I'll just say the translation, I won't go into details. Khashiyar Rahman bil ghayb, he has awe of Rahman, whilst being absent. So whilst being absent from public eyes, he has awe of Rahman. Like you're away from everyone else, you're at home, you have the awe of Rahman. This is because sometimes some people, they show this kind of like piety, but that piety is only when they're in public. Like we're on social media, in the comments, subhanallah, mashallah, astaghfirullah, they'll kind of like come out with all of their Islamic cliches then. But then when they're behind closed doors and no one's watching, no social media, they're all on their own, how much of that is honest, genuine, like piety in their hearts? Like how much of it remains? So this is one translation. Another translation is wa khashiyar rahman, that they have the khashiyah of Rahman bil ghayb, when it comes to the ghayb, those things they haven't seen. Khashiyar Rahman bil ghayb. Allah has told them about Jannah. Allah has told them about Jahannam. It's about these things. And the third is Khashiyar Rahman, and they have the khashiyah of Ar-Rahman whilst Allah is unseen. Like you can't see Allah, He's ghayb, you can't see Him. And normally you'd have khashiyah of someone who's in front of you, isn't it? Like imagine a big celebrity or a politician was to stand right at your doorstep in front of you. You start shaking and shivering. Right? But if he's in his own house and you're in your own house, you don't have that awe. But with the believer, even though Allah Himself is absent from their senses, they still have this awe inside of them. So these are three. This is why it's very important to learn the Arabic of the Quran. Arabic of the Quran, I keep emphasizing this. If you want to learn the Arabic of the Quran, I've made a course, 17 lessons Arabic course, which helps you get into this, kind of like taste this kind of stuff. Right? And mashallah, we've got students who are doing the Surah Yaseen course with us. It's a whole course where it's about 11-12 lessons where they go through the whole Surah Yaseen, and with what they've learned from the 17 lessons, like a follow-on course, they start to see the application of Arabic and see the multiple meanings that they can get from the Quran to the Arabic. And you can't get this through translation, unfortunately. It's just not able in translation. So he says, خشي الرحمن بالغيب. They have the خشية الرحمن بالغيب. Some have translated the غيب as actually heart. They said the غيب in Arabic is also a word that's used for heart, because the heart you can't see. It's in the body. You believe it's there, but you can't see it. So in other words, in their hearts they have this خشية. فبشره بمغفرة وأجر كريم. So give him glad tidings. Give this person is so honored in the eyes of Allah. This person is so sublime and such high caliber that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, this person, right, what should you do? Bashirhu, give him glad tidings. Bashara yubashiru, it actually means to to see, or to make the features of the face, the skin, change. That's from the word bishra, which means skin. So bashara yubashiru actually means to give good news, because when you give someone good news, their face changes, like they smile, they become happy. So Allah is saying to the Prophet, make these people happy. Bashirhu, make these people happy. Give them good news of what? Two things. Maghfirah, forgiveness. Maghfirah is what we call mubalagha, right? It's what we call masdar mimi with a ta at the end. So it comes from mubalagha, not just ghufran. It comes from maghfirah, that they will have a level of forgiveness that's unimaginable. Like the kind of forgiveness that Allah will forgive this person, the kind of sins that this person would have committed, and Allah will even forgive them, is something which is unimaginable. So make them happy with maghfirah, with unimaginable forgiveness, wa ajrin kareem, and a noble, generous reward. They're going to get a noble, generous gift. Yeah, now imagine if I said to you, I'm going to give you a gift. I can only give you a gift according to how much I obviously, what's in my capacity. And imagine someone who's, multi-billionaire, right? The richest man in the world, let's say. He was to say to you, I'm going to give you a gift. His gift is going to be according to how much he. So imagine Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the creator of the entire universe. He says to a person, to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, tell these people, make these people happy, and tell them I'm going to forgive them, and that I will give them a gift according to my ability. Yeah, subhanallah. This is a great reward, for someone who has these qualities inside of them. And these are the qualities that we need to nurture inside of ourselves. Sometimes these qualities become rusty and dusted, right? But we need to kind of polish them. The ittaba' al-dhikr, khashiyya ar-rahman, we need to work on these and refine these. And once we refine these, we start to be able to benefit from Allah's words, and we start to become closer to Allah and become better people in the society. And the more we suppress these things, right, the more we suppress these two, which is the ability to be able to submit yourselves to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and the ability to have this awe of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, submission and awe in one. This is the thing which will make us further and further and distant from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's mercy and His words. So anyway, we'll stop there inshallah. So 1 hour is up. So jazakallah khair. If you learnt anything from today's lesson, any sort of beneficial, put in the comments inshallah, and I'll try to answer any questions that you have. Okay, so we got a question here. Assalamu alaikum sahib. So how many times do we give da'wah to someone and it would be considered that we've done our bit? Didn't the prophets keep on going back to it? So the thing is, we don't have to give da'wah. So this is a misconception, that we have to give da'wah to people. We don't have to give any da'wah to anyone. It's actually something which prophets, it was a duty of the prophets, to give da'wah. And some of the scholars do mention that it's a fard kifaya. It's a fard kifaya for us to convey the message. As long as in the world there's a few people doing it, sufficient. Yeah, that's it. So I think a lot of people have this understanding that all humans have a duty on them to tell their Muslim, non-Muslim friends about Islam. It's not mentioned anywhere by the early scholars that it's a duty upon everyone. No. If they do say it's a duty, they say it's a fard kifaya upon, as long as in the world there's someone doing it, then that's sufficient. But that doesn't mean that we shouldn't tell them about Islam. Yes, definitely we should tell them about Islam, right? But we don't have to convey Islam to them in a way that is going to, that we're going to get them to accept Islam, right? We can tell them about Islam. We can tell them, just like you tell people about other things, sports. You tell them about food. You tell them about, I believe in Islam, and this is what we do. This is how we pray, right? Now, but if they start asking questions, They start to, okay, what do you guys say about LGBT, or what do you guys say about this? And now you don't know the answers to those, then you're going to have a problem. Then again and again, the message of Islam. And then how do you understand the ayah about giving reminders is beneficial for the believers? Yeah, giving reminders to believers is something which is good. We should do it. Tawasaw bil haqqi, tawasaw bil sabr. فذكر فإن الذكرى تنفع المؤمنين. Right? So dhikras benefit the believers, but not the disbelievers. Have raised regarding dawah are very important, relevant, because shame my life I'd made my whole family very difficult because I thought it was my duty to bring them close to Islam. Definitely, yeah. So this is what happens, a lot of the times this is what does happen with people when they start practicing. They feel inside they have to, and this is what happened to Sahaba as well. Sahaba naturally done it. But what we have to understand is the idea of going out. We don't see Sahaba actively going out to non-Muslims and explaining Islam to them in a way that we understand through da'wah, like da'wah sort of organization that we have today. We don't see that. And what they would simply do was, like the Quran says, just read the Quran to them. Just convey to them what the Quran says. And if they accept, they accept. If they don't accept, that's it. But that doesn't mean that there shouldn't be a group of people who are speaking about Islam. That should always exist. This Fard Kifaya group. And like I said, this can happen where it backfires on us, right? So we could be telling someone about Islam, but because we're not doing it the right way, we deter them from Islam. And I've heard stories of many times where someone says, the way my parents, were enforcing Islam upon me, I left Islam, and then in my 20s or 30s, I came back to Islam again. And it happens where, we have this sort of like mindset that Islam is like a culture that has to be forced onto the children. When I say forced on the children, as in, even if they reach the age of, late teens, that kind of thing. How do we continue to have patience in terms of trial, and how do we maintain our heart in Him? Right. So how do we continue to have patience? So patience is a very difficult thing, right? Patience is probably one of the hardest things in Islam, because it requires a person to control their emotions. This is what all patience is about. You control your emotions. If you're able to get on with your life and control your emotions, that's, you're a lucky person. Yeah, this is like Allah says in the Quran. وَمَا يُلَقَّاهَا إِلَّا الَّذِينَ صَبَرُوا وَمَا يُلَقَّاهَا إِلَّا ذُو حَظٍ عَظِيمٍ. It's the person who has حظ عظيم, a strong sort of gift for this. They're the ones that can do it. So you got to work on it. It's just a long-term thing. You work on it. And the best thing to do is those things that you think that are going to aggravate your emotions, you try to focus on those. You might have to sometimes leave certain emotions. You might have to stay away from certain people. You might have to stay away from sometimes social media, sometimes watching certain things on TV, or talking in certain groups sometimes some chat groups, they aggravate a person. So to have high iman, no one is ever going to have high iman. It's just you gotta put it in your head, from now until you die, your iman is going to fluctuate. It's going to go up sometimes, it's going to go down sometimes, up down, up down, up down. That's how it's going to work. There's no like cheat for it, right? You can't really kind of escape that. Wa alaikum assalam, Tirate. Thank you for explanation. You're welcome. So this is what we kind of try and understand from these verses. These verses are something which are supposed to have an impact on us, right? So when we read these verses, some of you guys are going to reading these verses, you're going to be listening to certain ayats translated or the meanings of words, and it's going to have like an impact on you different from how it's going to have an impact on someone else or even on me, right? Because many a times what tends to happen is the verses, they're connected with life experience as well. A lot of these kind of things, life experience, it kind of it makes that verse sort of like come into your mind. Right? You realize that verse because of something you went through in life. It's more vivid, and for some people, the verse they might just pass the verse and they won't really take much notice of the lessons that can be learned from that. So this is why I don't like to kind of go too much into the tafsir of this. And in the past, on my YouTube channel, I put up some of my old tafsir lessons that I used to do. And sometimes we used to go through one verse like for 2 hours. Yeah, one verse just for 1 hour, 2 hours, just discussing it, looking at the different ways the Quran explains this and how the scholars have said it. But that's not I would say that would be for something which is more academic. As for something which is more of a reminder, Ramadan, I think this should be sufficient, inshallah. So Jazakallah khair, guys. Any other questions? Is there anything else? Yeah, so these are going to be every week in Ramadan at the same time, 2 o'clock, inshallah. So if you haven't checked out the other videos I put up regular daily hadith, 40 hadith collection. I put up daily hadith in Ramadan. You can check that out. That's roughly put up every day about 9:15 UK time. If you subscribe to the channel and press the bell button, you'll get all the updates of all the videos that I make. Right? Any new sort of like video that I put up, right? You're gonna get some notification for it. So you can check out all the videos I've got. There's loads and loads of things I've done. Learning Quran, on hadith, on fiqh, on reminders, on Arabic, lots and lots on learning Arabic as well. Alright guys, so Jazakallah khair, thank you very much. And for those who don't know, we have a podcast as well every Monday and Thursday. And the Monday and Thursday one, I'm accompanied by Brother Altaf and Brother Naveed, where we discuss things that are relevant to a lot of people. So tune into that as well. And you can find more information on the YouTube channel, inshallah ta'ala. And if you're interested in learning Arabic language, the Quran in 17 lessons, then email the email below. So the email that's going below on the screen, email that, and you'll get information about the 17 lessons. And lots of people are doing it with us, alhamdulillah. You do it in your own time. It's paced out. You can submit the homeworks whenever you like, but at the end of it, you are going to start to understand the Arabic in the Quran, alhamdulillah. Requesting and mentioning your du'as. Yes, Jazakallah khair, Brother Tahir. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accept our du'as and accept our fasting, and put barakah into all of your lives as well, and our lives as well, and allow us to be able to benefit as much as possible, maximize our benefit of the month of Ramadan. This is the month of Ramadan, shouldn't go by and us feeling as though we haven't benefited from it. So we should try to benefit as much as possible, inshallah. Jazakallah khair, and remember your du'as as well. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.